friends, welcome back to the cabin. Today I had a great idea for a series, and it's July here at the cabin, and I thought, oh, it's gonna be great. I'll do a top 10 gifts for Christmas in July, things I think you should really look at, products I love, just the best things in all kinds of different price ranges, because I know there are people out there that do the top 10 inexpensive things for Christmas and the top 10 best buys for Christmas and all those kinds of things. And then I got to thinking about it and I thought, you know, there are times when I like to showcase very specific products for very specific reasons. And, you know, it would be better, rather than doing a top 10 like everybody else, to do something called Countdown to Christmas, where I showcase a lot of products in one single category in all kinds of different price ranges and tell you what I think are the best buys, what I think are the misses, the things you should skip, and might be controversial, but give you my opinion on some of the better gifts that you can either buy yourself or your friend, or you can stick a little note out to the Christmas fairy on what you think would be the best buys this Christmas. And that way, you know, I can add to these reviews any other time. So today I really wanted to talk to you about irons and ironing tools, because leading up to the end of this video, I have a bunch of things to show you, but I have the best iron I've ever owned in my life, and I really want to show it to you. And also a few heat tools and a few ironing tools that have no heat. So I thought those would be my best bets. So if that's something of interest to you in all different ranges and all different price points, then stick around and let's talk about irons in the countdown to Christmas. Let's talk about irons, and the first thing that I will showcase to you is the lower end of the perspective of irons. What I've used, what I wouldn't use, why I wouldn't use it. These are just really my opinions, but I'll show you what I have, and should be in all different types of price points and needs, and let's get started. All right, the first iron I want to show you is right at the low end of the market. And this guy I got right on Amazon. By the way, the links will be below in the description box if you're interested in any of these products or you want to look at them for yourself. This one's called the Impress iron, I-M-P-R-E-S-S. This one is on this list of things to buy for Christmas for two reasons. One, its price point. I believe this iron is right around the $10 to $15 mark. And number two, I chose it because, do you see how light? I'm just basically throwing this around. This has a Teflon coated front, which is very easy to clean. I don't think it is automatic shut off. It may be, but I don't think it is. But it's just a very simple iron. It does have steam in it. It does have the little nozzle to spritz. At this price point, you know, there's a whole video on dry iron and steam iron pressing. I am typically a dry iron presser, but occasionally we do like to have and need some steam. This is, to me, a workhorse dry iron. It gets nice and hot. It is 1200 watts, I think. So it does get to a decent heat. It does have all the temperature settings in the center. The reason I would kind of stay away from steam or putting water in this is because it has this, because it's cheap, it has this little dial nozzle. This is the steam button, and it has this little dial nozzle here for different types or different levels of steam. I don't trust it. I don't trust anything but it does have a little nozzle for water, and it does sort of stay away from the tip, and it does have the little spritz button to have the little spritz come out the front. But, you know, again, dry iron, but we're talking about a $10 to $15 price point here. So it's cheap. It's super light. If you have mobility issues and you don't like those super heavy irons, this one is definitely a great buy. I use it here in the studio when we need an extra iron. They were here for a while until I found the dream machine of all dream machines, which I will get to. But before that, this little workhorse sat here and worked at our retreat center, and it's pretty great. Next up, almost in exactly the same vein, is this guy here. This guy is the Black & Decker, and I believe I paid about $18. So these are under $20 price point. Again, you can see pretty light. It's not quite as light as the Impress, which is sort of a non-brand brand. Black & Decker has a little bit better name. So it is a few dollars more, but not very much. So it's still into that under $20 price point. This one is a steam iron. It has an automatic shutoff that goes off about 15 minutes. It does have vertical steam, which is holding the steam button straight up like this if you wanted to steam clothes or something like that, which none of us are doing if you're a quilter. It does have the ability to take water. This one doesn't have any kind of closure or flap, it's just a hole. I have put water in this. They fared okay. I don't do it very often, but they did fare okay. And this one is a decent price point, a decent weight. So if you have mobility issues, if you have, economic needs, it's a pretty good, decent workhorse. And for $15 or $20, if for some reason something happens, you just toss it out and buy another one. Now, because I've showed these first two have this Teflon coating on the surface of the iron, I do want to show you a little cautionary tale, and I'll do that with our little overhead camera here. So in our overhead camera, you can see there is our Teflon surface. And if you look right up here in the upper corner, you can see there's a little chip on the Teflon coating. I can see it starting to wear a little bit on the outside edges, but if that's not of any concern, but this little chip right here is eventually gonna be, whoops, we can get in the camera, is gonna be a bit of concern. Now, how did this chip happen? Well, my guess is somebody who was ironing here in the studio ran over some pins, probably glass head pins. And if you do it with any kind of force, it is gonna take the surface off. So this is kind of the downside of having a Teflon coating, is that they do chip, they do wear, and eventually you're gonna need to replace it. But like I said, this iron isn't very expensive and it works just fine. We're gonna use it until it falls apart. And it's a great thing to have, especially if you're having friends over to sew, or if you have a charity, you're working out of a church, you're in a shop, whatever, and you just know that maybe not everybody's gonna pay attention to how your irons are being used. These are great little workhorses. And so they're not very expensive, and I highly recommend those. All right, I'm gonna get to the next iron that I love. This is a bit of a controversial topic, and I love this iron and for lots of different reasons. And I recommend this iron, but there are recommendations with reservations, and I'll tell you why. First, let's talk about the pros of this iron. This is one of the Panasonic cordless irons. It's got a Teflon box to it. You can see it in the overhead camera. I can just grab the edges and the lid lifts off. Because this is a Teflon coated lid, if I'm at class or at a workshop or a retreat or something like that and I need to pack up quickly, I don't have to wait for this sucker to cool down. I can take this iron, even hot, and just set this lid over top, click it into place, and grab it by the handle, and off I go. So I like that. I like that it's ready to go, and I don't have to worry about unplugging in a half an hour before I'm ready to leave, so that's kind of nice. So it can also function as a dust cover when you're not using it. So it is a base level iron, and the iron itself is cordless. I'm gonna remove the iron for just a minute, it's not plugged in, so I can show you the base. And this one I actually have marked as a steam iron. It does have water in it, and I can move it all around. This one actually doesn't leak really harshly for the most part. They all have a tendency to spit every now and then, but this one, I find the Panasonics to be pretty good. It also says on this particular iron that you can fill it from your sink. I don't recommend that. We came from a well water home. Here we're a city water home. I still, well water has a lot of iron and all kinds of minerals in it. City water has a lot of chlorine. I just would keep putting distilled water in my irons. It's just a good general maintenance tip. So despite what the instructions say, I would still kind of do that. The base of the iron has the cord in it. So when I'm ready to go home, I just let the cord go up in there. And again, the lid fits right on top. Now, you set this iron in. It is an automatic shut-off iron. It shuts off after about 15 minutes or so. It has 3 settings, low, medium, and hot. It's got a spritzer, it's got the steam, it's got all the things that you need it to have for a regular iron. And it has a really cool well. The lid fills like that. And assuming that this is down, nothing can come out of that little hole, so it's great. Okay, so let's talk about the pros of this iron. What's really great about this iron is while it's hot, when I go to do something, I can lift it up, I can go down and I can press, and I don't have to worry about having this cord, you know, scooching stuff around and moving all around. I really love that. It keeps me from having any kind of an accident because the cord kind of grabbed your fabric a little bit and got it caught up underneath something, or wrinkled something underneath you while you're pressing over here. It's wrinkling over here. I really don't like that. The other reason that I love it is because I'm a long armor. I have a 12-foot, 14-foot frame here as a long armor. Sometimes when I'm loading a backing that's been seamed, I've loaded it and I've got like the seam underneath the backing is getting a little flippy flappy, if you know what I'm talking about, or it folds back over. I can actually heat this iron up, grab it, walk over to the long arm, touch something and hit something to get it to iron out, and then set it back in the base. And I really like the flexibility of being able to do that. So for those reasons, I am absolutely in love with the cordless iron. It has been, I've taken it to classes, I've taken it to workshops, I've used it almost exclusively in my studio for quite a number of years. I still have one over by my sewing machine. I just love it. I think the auto shut off function works really well, and working in a small space without a cord, that's like ideal for me. Now let's talk about the cons, because I had multiple, when I started the retreat center, I had multiple of these cordless irons here, and I thought, what a wonderful thing to put in the studio, because then I don't have to worry about ladies kicking the cords with their feet or stepping over them or anything like that. It just kept it kept the room nice and neat. It kept things from being dangerous, and I appreciated that. The feedback that I got from these irons was really, really negative. Now I can guess this. Basically what everybody said was they don't get hot enough. Now, I personally disagree. I've done a lot of professional sewing and quilting and have pressed tons of stuff, and I find that the irons get plenty hot enough. What happens though is the iron's heating up in its base. The second you take it out of its base, it starts to cool down. That's just obvious. Now, I don't think it cools down immediately. I don't think it's a huge big deal, but if you're one of those people that sits and presses and then presses, and then, you know, I mean, every time you're doing something longer, it's getting cooler and cooler. So it tends to upset people. They think that it doesn't quite get hot enough. I think it gets hot enough. I just think you have to be aware that it's a cordless iron. So the upside is you don't have to deal with the cord, but the downside is that you iron and then you put it back in the base so it can heat back up. And you iron, you put it back in the base so it heats back up. That tends to be a problem for people. And if you're not used to using it, it can seem as though it doesn't quite get hot enough. So that can be a bit of a touchy subject. But if you're one of those people that uses a lot of fusible and you like things to get super, super hot and stay super, super hot, this is definitely not the iron for you. It's never gonna get to that level of heat that you need it to get to long term while you're really pumping on something, you know, just trying to get it to stay hot. So I wouldn't recommend this for that purpose, but for the purposes that I've talked about, I would highly recommend it. So I'm gonna recommend this one with reservations. And these tend to be about $100. So that's about their price point. And they come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. This one right here is shaped pointed on both sides like a football. The one I have over by my studio is white and teal, and it's shaped a little bit more like an iron. They all work the same, and they're the Panasonic iron. So link in the description box. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, this guy is the Sunbeam iron, and this one is probably a little bit more of a price point. Somewhere between $35 and $50 is gonna be the price point on this particular iron when I purchased it. Sunbeam, again, we're all pretty familiar with those. They come in big box stores. This one has a couple other features. So this one is, again, an automatic shutoff. It's about 1,000 watts, so it's a couple hundred watts smaller than everything we've seen so far. So, I mean, 1,000 watts is enough watts, but you know, it tends to not get as hot. It has vertical steam, so if I wanted to hold it up and steam, it'll come out to do clothes. If that's something you need, then you need to know it can do that. This model has a stainless steel sole plate, which honestly is pretty preferred. Teflon's great, but stainless steel, it cleans up really nicely again. But you do have to watch if you get a leaky iron, sometimes that can cause a problem. But these stainless steel sole plate at this price point is a pretty good deal. Also, this iron has a really unique cord system. So I'm showing you in the overhead where the cord is actually in the base. That's pretty handy. Now, when you're using it, you're gonna pull the cord all the way back out. But if you take this to a retreat or to a class, it's really easy because you can just hit the button and it goes right back up inside when no one's watching me and I'm not filming. It goes right up inside the base, and that's a handy thing to take around. This one, a little bit heavier. And again, I'm really picking these up without water in them. So the more water you put in them, the heavier they're gonna get. A little bit heavier, but again, it has a stainless steel sole plate and you're carrying the cord around. But anyway, still a reasonable, pretty reasonable weight for somebody with mobility issues. Actually, we're super handy. So it's a good price point. It's a decent iron. I've had water in this one. It does okay. The telltale sign is it doesn't have any staining around the holes. So when it did have water in it, it didn't tend to drip or leak. And to be frankly honest, and you're gonna find out in a minute, I find that the cheaper the iron, the better they do. This is the next two irons I know are gonna be super controversial, but I'm gonna go for it anyway. But anyway, the cheaper the iron, usually the better they do. And if you go and spring for one that has this stainless steel sole plate, you're probably gonna be happier. But the stainless steel does add a little bit of weight to the iron. This one is the Rowenta Professional. Mine is rather old. When I purchased this iron, it set me back about 120 bucks. Not cheap. It is 1750 watts, so it does get a little bit warmer. It does have all the settings in the dial. It does do steam. It has a little spritzer on the front. All right, I paid a lot of money for this iron. I got automatic shutoff, which is the same as I got with my Sunbeam. It says extra long burst. I cannot confirm nor deny that the burst is extra long. It's pretty heavy with no water in it. So, that leads me to believe it's a commercial model. I don't know what they're doing in the commercial world, that this is the best iron. I think because it has a high wattage, that's what they're thinking, that it gets nice and hot. And maybe I keep it around just in case somebody with heavy fusible needs wants an iron. It has had water in it. It no longer has water in it. I would love to tell you it doesn't have water in it because we used all the water. That's not the case. It doesn't have water in it because it leaks like a sieve, okay? It has this little slide hole right here where you fill the tank and you put the water down in there and then you slide it back, and one would think that because it's so difficult to slide and it's up high in the tank that it wouldn't leak. Well, friends, it does. It leaks out of the tip, it leaks out of the sprayer, it leaks a little bit between the sole plate and the top. It definitely spits out through all the holes. It's been probably the leakiest iron. It's also the oldest iron, and I can tell you that I've had it a while and it's had a professional electrical repair because I was absolutely determined that I was going to get 120 bucks worth of use out of this iron. I'm not impressed. And everybody I know that has purchased a Rowenta iron, despite the fact that it has a phenomenal name, has always found them to be leaky. That's just my humble opinion and my own personal research. But for the money, it should do all the things that an iron's supposed to do and it shouldn't leak. And I haven't had that experience. So for this reason, I'm gonna tell you, save your money. Don't buy a Rowenta. I think you'll be disappointed. You'll spend too much money and you'll be disappointed afterwards. And that's just my opinion. Don't hate me in the comments, but that's the way it is. Next, friends, well, it's everybody's favorite, the Oliso. Let me plug it in because I really want you to get the full effect of what it's like to partner with this iron. For those of you who don't have one. Let's see here. Okay, it's making a ticky noise. So here's the thing about the Oliso. The Oliso is supposed to stand itself up. So you can see, let me lift this up a little bit because I know we're out of camera. All right, if I touch it, it goes down. Can you see mine? It's making little ticky noises because it's not working properly. And now it's raising. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what an Oliso is supposed to do, oh, there it's going down. When you let off the iron, it's supposed to pop up, and when you touch it, it pops down so you can actually use it. Oh, now it's gonna start working, kind of, but it's fooling itself. okay? As long as my hand is on it, its feet are down. And then when I let go, it's supposed to pop up off of the real estate so that it doesn't burn the surface that it's on. So there's a reason why I plugged this in so you could see this one working. The answer is it doesn't work, okay? The feet act crazy. So here's why I don't recommend this iron. Now the feet are gonna pop out. So this is what it's supposed to do. I'm supposed to grab it and the feet are supposed to go in so I can put it down on its surface. And then when I let go of it, it's supposed to pop up. It kind of did. By the way, it has a little water in it. I'm not pressing the steam button, but steam's coming out and water's spitting all over the place. You see that? Bubbling. Okay, I'm just gonna turn it off now because it's annoyed me. We got a little spittle. Okay, I joined the bandwagon and I bought into this iron and I thought, oh, that's really cool. My mom had one, my friends had one, and it seemed like a great idea at the time. It was very pricey. And here's the thing, it doesn't need to be this pricey. It also does not need to be this mechanical. An iron works just fine. You pick it up, you put it down, you iron something, you pick it up, you set it aside. Right? That's all it has to do. It doesn't need to raise itself up and lower itself up, because when it has mechanics like this, well, it's bound to stop working at some point. And that's what happened with this iron. It never really functioned properly. It's always broken. And then as you can see in the upper camera, there's bubbles all over it. There's stuff stuck in it. It spits water out of the holes. So it's not even dripping within its body. It's spitting random stuff out. And now I have a puddle full of, by the way, not just water, but this sandy calcium deposit stuff. Now this iron has had water in it, but it's always had distilled water, and there's absolutely no reason why it should be acting like this. So I spent a lot of money on this iron. It malfunctions. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to. The little feet aren't working. And by the way, when the feet aren't working and these feet don't go in, you can't iron with it. So if the mechanics break, you're done. And that's what happened to this iron. Now, aside from that, as an instructor and the owner of a retreat center here, here's the other reason I don't like Oliso irons. They create the worst ironing habits you can ever imagine. Now, I think when we all grew up, you put your iron down and then you picked it back up, because if you left it down, it would do what? It would scorch the surface. I own the retreat center here, and I can tell you that I know within the first 5 minutes of everybody working who owns an Oliso iron. And I'll tell you, because they iron their stuff with my iron, and then they just push my iron over and set it down on its face, and they leave it there and they fiddle with their parts and move stuff around. And meanwhile, this iron is making the surface hotter and hotter and hotter. And I have to go over and set the iron upright and say, that's not an Oliso. So in my opinion, it is creating a whole world, a whole society of ironers, pressers, that are leaving anybody's iron face down because it's a habit. They're used to not having to pick their iron up. They're used to having to slide it over onto the side and it lifts itself. And because of that, they're not picking up the irons, and they can cause a fire, they could melt something, they can do any number of damage to someone else's store or retreat center or house or church or whatever, because they're learning bad habits. So I'm not a big fan of this for lots of different reasons. The habit reason, because I've lost my home to a fire at one point. The habit reason is probably my biggest thing, but also you do not need an overly mechanical iron. You don't need a big version of it. You don't need a mini version of it. It will break, and you will not get the lifetime out of it. So if you're gonna have something break eventually, would you rather spend $120 on an iron to have it break, or $150 on an iron to have it break? Or would you rather just throw the $10 or the $20 one out? You choose, it's your money, whatever. All right, now I have a surprise, and I'm gonna show you absolutely hands down, of all the irons I've ever used, everything that's here, the best iron I have ever had for quilting. It's coming up. All right, you've waited long enough. Here is my choice for the best iron on the market that I've ever used. This guy is the Reliable Maven 125 IS, and its big brother is the Reliable Maven 140 IS. Now the big guy, you can see, has a taller base. It holds 1.5 liters of water in its base, and this guy holds 1 liter of water in its base. Now you may be asking yourself, gosh, why do you need water in the base? Why is this the best iron you've ever used? I'll tell you why. All right, let's examine the parts. The first thing, this one, we'll start with the little guy. The first thing is it's got a tank of water underneath, and there is no tank in the handle. Let's unlock it. Okay, this guy is automatic shutoff. You plug the base into the wall so you don't have the cord that you need to worry about that's gonna pull it off the wall or off the table. But you do have this guy. This is a hose, and this hose is where the steam comes in. But right now, I don't have any steam coming from it. It is just a dry iron. So this is a quilter's dream for me because I'm a dry iron presser, but I'm able to offer steam ironing to anybody who wants to do that while they're here in the studio. So the iron sits on its base. When you pick it up automatically by touching it, the controls pop on and you're able to set the temperature. The small iron has an eco setting and also 3 levels of steam and heat. The bigger guy has, again, the eco setting, but also 4 levels of steam and heat. Now, let me just move the little guy for a moment and we'll concentrate on the big guy. And I've got the big guy sort of sitting in the upper camera too, so you can see it. Let's get a piece of fabric. All right, now let me show you the controls on the base. So on the big base, like I said, let's give this guy that. All right, he's got a great big tank on him that at the fill line holds 1.5 liters of water. On the back side of the unit is a touch screen. And if you put your finger right in the center, it automatically pops up with a temperature. And there is the 4 levels. There's the eco, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of steam. There's where the controls are on this guy. And I'm able to lift him up right now without the handle falling off because there's a little lock switch right here at the top. I'll put this here so you can see it moving. So I just turn it like this, and then I'm able to pick up the handle. Now, it's not exceptionally heavy. One of the reasons, it's not super light, but it isn't exceptionally heavy. And one reason is because the water is not in the tank. This has a ceramic sole plate. So it is non-stick. It's not stainless, so it's not gonna have any kind of rust spots on it. And it's not Teflon, so you're not gonna have that scratchy off surface. This is all ceramic. There's a ceramic sole plate here on the base as well. And then there's 3 little Teflon bumps that the iron fits on so that the 2 pieces of ceramic aren't scratching each other. Now this one has an auto shut off. It kind of goes to sleep, and then you just put your finger on the temp circle and it pops back on. But while it's asleep, the ceramic base is still pretty warm. So it's been asleep this whole time. I'm gonna go ahead and just run the iron over this piece of fabric right here. It glides like absolute dream. It's like butter because of that ceramic sole plate. And you know, everything's all pressed, but you can see I have a couple little wrinkles in the back of this. So if I want steam, how do I get the steam out? Well, there is a little trigger right here in the iron. So I pick the iron up, I can use the iron all I want, dry iron, but let's say I want a little bit of steam, all I have to do is grab the trigger and the steam immediately comes out. So I can steam press this little piece, pick it right back up, take my finger off the trigger. It's now not a steam iron anymore. It's a dry iron. So it only has steam when you press the trigger. And I'm gonna try to get it on camera. Press the trigger, there's the steam, let go of the trigger, steam quits. It's just that simple. It's just that simple, which means everybody in the room can have a steam iron, but also a dry iron. Fantastic. I've never had any problems with the machine. Let me show you kind of how the base of the machine works. So inside the base of this one, if I want to fill the tank, all I have to do is grab the little sides and pull the tank out, just like this. Now it's beeping at me because it says, oh, there's no water, and I got a little water button here. So here's how the tank comes out, and the tank has a little spout right here, and that's where I put the water in. I'm only using distilled water in this unit, and then close it right back up and it goes back in. It also, inside the base of the unit, this is the big one now because the bottom one, the little one has different controls, but on the bottom of the unit, there is a little tab, and when you pull the tab out, inside is a filter. This filter has to be pre-soaked and the machine has to be primed the first time you open it. But once it's primed, you don't ever have to do it again. You just have to fill the tank. And then I'm just gonna pop the tank back in until it clicks. It's all ready to go. People loved it so much, that's why I replaced all the irons with the smaller ones. But it just works so well, and it just hits the sweet spot that everybody needs. So if you have a group of people that come and sew all the time, or if you are a dry iron presser like me, but like to have a little steam every now and then, this is definitely the top choice on the market. Now, it's not cheap. This big guy is MSRP is gonna set you back $199, and the littler guy is gonna set you at $179, but I think it's a great choice for a nice happy medium. So what is essentially happening inside this machine is a little pump, and the pump pumps everything up through this high hose, and that's how the steam comes out. So the controls on this particular unit are slightly different. Let me lift it up so you can see it in the front camera. Again, this has a tank that is a 1 liter tank, and then the controls, instead of being on the back of the machine, are actually on the handle. So the 1 liter tank comes out the same way. There it is right there with its little spout in the front, and then you slide it back in till it clicks. All right, it has the exact same lock feature on the front, which means when you have the lock feature down, you can actually lift the whole thing up by that. It's not gonna fall off. And because this one stays a little bit warm even when it is in its sleep mode, it's always nice to come and lock the tip of it. That way if somebody bumps the table, it's not gonna fall off and automatically set itself right. Once I take the lock off and I lift up the handle, then I have this little button right here on the front of the iron, and if I click on it, I get eco mode, and then I get the temperature controls and the steam. And you can actually, the temperature controls go up 3 levels, and also the steam levels. Now this one I said hasn't been primed. Oh, let me show you the filter in this one. So the smaller one has a filter here. You press it and it bounces up. That's what the filter looks like. This is what you have to pre-soak in order to get it to work, and then you just press it right down in there, and that's how that one works. All right, I said I haven't primed this one yet. I already primed the other two, but I hadn't primed this one because I wanted you to hear one that actually works, where it just automatically starts. And if you buy this machine, because the first time I bought it, I actually thought mine was broken, let's try to get this one to actually prime. So I'm just gonna hit the trigger. I've let it heat up, and I'm gonna hit the trigger. It's a little bit of a ticking noise. That's the pump noise as it's trying to draw the water through the machine. And I'm just gonna continue to hold the trigger for a little while, and I'll start seeing it'll get quieter and quieter and less often, and steam will start to rise out from the front. So now we're really quiet. There's no real ticking happening. I can hear the thumping of the pump, and it's just trying to prime this unit. Now it says in the manual, it takes a few seconds, I think it's what it says. It's gonna take about 30 seconds to prime, and I'm just gonna hold the trigger. It's slowed down, it's getting quieter. I'm just gonna keep holding the trigger until I start seeing the steam. And there you go. Now, once the unit is primed, the filter's soaked, and the unit itself is starting to blow steam out, you don't need to prime it again. So as you hear, it's all quiet. We're not hearing it anymore. I can turn it off, set it down, and when I pick it back up, it'll just steam. So the first time you do it, you have to prime the pump. Once you prime the pump, it works just like the other one. Every time you pick it up, you hit the trigger, steam comes out. One thing I want to point out is we've not seen it spit at all since I've been holding this trigger. So it's not spitting anything out. With other steam irons that I found, or other steam systems that I found, they spit a little bit, and this one doesn't at all. So now I'm gonna let the trigger go because I see a nice big steam cloud, set it back down. Okay, so the differences in this unit at all, just where the controls and the filter are shown, and also how much water is held here. And I can tell you that you may really love the extra level of heat that the big one has. It actually has, it's taller, but it actually has a narrower footprint by maybe a 1/2 inch from this one. but the little unit sits pretty nicely. That's really the only difference that I can see between the two machines, is how much water it holds and where the controls are located. As far as usage goes, they all function exactly the same. And if you want to save that extra $20, you really don't need the extra tank. It may sound as though, gosh, you know, I want the extra tank because I don't want to have to fill it all the time. I don't think you are gonna have to fill it all the time. I have put the irons in, and the only reason I filled them again today is because these are new, because I just had a retreat and they bought all the irons out of the room. I have really only filled them one time, and that was when I set them up. And I had several of them that I used for 3 months or better. And I had retreats here and sewers here the whole time, and I hardly ever had to fill them up. So I don't think you're gonna notice the tank dripping down anymore unless you're unless you're really steam pressing everything over and over again, in which case it's really not that big a deal to fill it. And once it's primed, it's ready to go. So those are my best picks for Christmas this year. And if you're looking for something that you really want to spend your money on, that I think, in my opinion, you're going to be super happy with, I have replaced all the irons in the studio with these. I've sold them to friends, I've sold them to retreaters who are here, and I feel really, really good. And all of them say the same things. Best iron I ever had. I really love my iron. So I think you're gonna really like that. Now moving on, I wanna show you some other tools that I think are really useful when you're using your irons. And I'm just gonna set this guy down a little bit so I can show you the one that we're sitting on. All right, this guy is a TNT board. And you may have seen these at shows throughout the country. This one, you can go to TNT, like the 3 letters, like the blow up stuff, quiltboards.com. And what she does is covers all of the boards in really fun fabrics, in canvas fabrics, which are really nice, or cotton, heavy cotton twill. They are covered on the back, and then you can see they're all really nicely made with wood, and they're really, really beautifully made. And they're all routed, so there's no rough edges. So if I pull this handle up here, I now have a handle to carry it just like a briefcase, going to quilt shows and also workshops. So I take this with me to classes and workshops all the time, so that I know I have my own surface. If I fold that up and I pull out these 2 guys, now I have a little stand, and I can set it up where I had it before. Now I could set this down, right down on my surface, and use it that way. I like having it up a little bit because right now I am on top of my cutting mat, and this guy stands up a good like 5-6 inches off the top of my cutting mat. So I know there's no heat that's gonna get on this mat and warp this mat. So that's why I like having it up in the air. It's also great if you're at a workstation, at a retreat or something. You can actually set this on your work surface, and you can put things up underneath of it. So, you know, and just iron on top. So I think that's a good reason to have it. And it's just a nice little tool. I wish I could tell you what the price point is, but if I find it, I'll stick it on the video so you can see it for this particular size. The cool thing is that she has all different sizes of boards. She has big boards, she has little square ones, all kinds of travel ones. This is one of the bigger travel ones with the handle, but for all your needs, she has all kinds of different sizes. So you should check her out if you're looking for a really fun and a really useful travel board, or even one for another little space in your house. I also think it's kind of fun. You could put this in your laundry room next to your washer or dryer, and if you needed to like iron some pants really quick, you could pull it out, put it on your dining room table. I would recommend putting a towel under it, or to put some felt pads underneath of it, so if you set it down on the table, it didn't damage your table. But it works really nice. You can just set up this quick ironing board and take it right back down, so it's really easy to pack away. So I'm gonna fold that up and just set it here so you can see, and then we'll look at some of the other tools that I have. All right, the next set of tools I have that are all laid out here are handy things for either use with your iron or to use as an iron without actually having the heat. So let's look. So the first thing I would recommend having in your studio is iron off. If you don't have this already, you need to get some. This is by Dritz, and it is a cream solution. You can use this with a towel and your hot iron to clean any sticky residue, rust stains, calcium deposits, and if you have an accident with fusible, this is gonna save your life. So you can actually take an iron that you think is ruined and you can clean it off with this stuff. It's kind of a miracle. I sell a lot of it, but it's always here in the studio. And sometimes, depending on the project we're working on, I might have to clean these irons 4 or 5 times while everybody's here. And this is just handy. And I teach everybody how to use it. And usually when I show them how I clean the iron and fix it, they buy the product. So if you don't have any of this in your studio, you need to get some just in case. All right, here's some other little tools. So this guy right here is a clover mitt. Again, I'm gonna have the links. You put your hand in the back of it and it has a handy pad, and this pad is in case you need to press something and you just need to get underneath of it and have a little bit more control. This is a mitt pad, and you can use your iron right on top of the pad like this, and it doesn't scald your hand, but it gives you a little bit more control. Let's say you need to do a curved seam and you don't have a pressing ham or something like that. You can ball your fist up and kind of work around the corners of stuff without hurting your hand. So this guy, super handy, not really expensive. This is a Clover product and I highly recommend it. All right, more Clover products are these little fingers. So this one is a rubber guy. He's real stiff here, got a rounded point on this side and almost like a spatula end on this side. This is made of silicone, and if you ever need to iron something and you gotta hold it flat and you're always doing it with your finger and then you're trying to get your iron in here, like, okay, save your hand and you can set this down and iron. It's great for holding down little like binding strips and stuff like that, and just keeping everything flat so you can iron in front of it. And it saves your fingertips. So this is a really handy tool. Same thing with this guy. This guy's a Clover guy. It's got a little pokey end to it that you can use as a stiletto or you can use as a turning tool, but it's also got this like rubber tip, almost like a pen, kind of just a little rubber tip. And this one works really well when I'm trying to press open seams. I can get my finger in there and really hold those seams down without burning my hand. So these two, super handy. I really, really like these tools. They're great tools to have. Consider them. Okay, these guys right here, these are the hot hammers, and these are very handy. This is sort of a felty, it's kind of stiff, but it's like felt, and it's got a ruler on it. And this one is too. This one has little corner points and also a rounded point and a fold in. This one's very handy. I probably, as a quilter, use this one much more. So let me show you what it's for. I gotta find my little piece of fabric here. All right, let's say you have a pattern that says, I want you to fold over a seam that's a 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna lay this guy down on my fabric, and then I can fold my fabric up right on the ruler at the 1/2 inch mark, and then take my iron and press, and I've got the ruler right there. I can press right on top of the ruler and make sure everything is perfect every time. And then when I pull the ruler out, I've got that nice crisp folded edge that is exactly a 1/2 inch. And then if I want to fold it again, I can do that. If I want to measure it again, I can do that. But when you're making those little parts, that is about as handy as you get. So you can iron right on top of these. So whether you're doing the corner of a placemat or a handle for a bag or something like that, these hot hammers are about the coolest thing. Little felty rulers you can iron on, pretty neat. Okay, now I want to talk about your non-heat tools. And these guys probably function about the same. This is a pressing wheel. So if you just need to press something real quick, and you don't want to get up and go to the iron, or you don't need it to press a lot, you just need a little, like a finger press. These little wheels are like the best, and they make a light press line, but not something that you're not going to be able to press out afterwards, but it's just a good guideline if you're trying to fold something over. And so it leaves a nice little crease and works really well. And that, if you don't need something that's that full and that crisp, it does a pretty decent job of showing you where the edge is. And this guy works exactly the same. This is a wooden version of that. So let's say I want to do the same thing. I want to fold this over and I want to get a crisp finger press. I can just lay this guy right down on his little wedgy bottom and just finger press that down. And can you see? I've got another little finger press. So if you need an iron to do something very simple, but you don't need heat, these tools work very, very well. And these wheels come wooden kind. I believe this is a Clover version, which is a little plastic wheel, and this one's just a little wooden one. You can find craftsmen that make them. I think this one is also a Clover tool. So there are all kinds of different tools that you can use that work. And then the last one, I pulled this one off my shelf. This is a clapper, and if you don't know what a clapper is, if you're ever working with fabrics that you can't iron, so let's say minky or fleece or fusible fleece, and you need to press a seam, well, this is what you're gonna use to do that. So you can actually fold, it's probably not gonna work well with cotton, but we'll give it a shot. You can fold your fabric and then you press the clapper down, and the clapper holds the fabric down. It's actually got some weight to it. There's no handle. It's really flat on one side, kind of rounded on the other. It has some little finger sections in it, but it does the same thing. It creases, but on a fleece where you really don't need a hot iron, you can lay this down and you can open seams with it, and just, that is how you're gonna press your fleece or your minky. That's how you're gonna make that work. So this one's called the clapper, and like I tell my husband all the time, it's got some weight to it, so it also works if someone startles you in your room, or if they come in and try to use your fabric scissors to cut paper, you can knock them out with it too, but you know, because it's kind of heavy. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing some of what I think are my handy tools, all different price points that you can get, and all the descriptions, the links, the pricing, all of that is in the description box below. I hope you found something that you can't live without, or I hope I either convinced you not to waste money, or at least maybe validated your own opinion about some of these products, and gave you a nice range of products in your price range to think about coming up. So this is my episode of Countdown to Christmas, the irons episode, and I hope you'll stick around for other videos on lots of topics, and we're gonna do more of these Countdown to Christmas with some products that I really love, probably cutting products next. So hope you'll stick around. Thumbs up if you learned something, subscribe if you're interested in sticking around, and as always, happy sewing, happy quilting.